Greetings, everybody. It is March 27th, and we have a wonderful scripture reading and sermon for you for this week. We are looking at the parable of the Prodigal Son, which is awesome, one of my favorites. And let's do our reading, and then we'll get to the message. So the prodigal brother starts in Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 32. Then Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me.' And so he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough to spare? And here I am dying of hunger. I will get up. I'll go to my father, and I'll say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him coming and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him, and put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead, and is alive again. He was lost, and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house and heard the music and the dancing, he called one of the servants over and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he got him back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. So his father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I've been working like a slave for you, and I've never disobeyed your command. Yet you've never given me even a young goat, so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours comes back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you kill the fatted calf for him.' And the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'" The word of God for the people of God. I sometimes I think it's one of my favorite parables, and sometimes I think that we really just should just read the story and leave it at that. I don't know what else I can say that would make that story any more significant or beautiful to behold. You know, it's just one of those. It's one of those things. It's just one of those stories that really captures us. But nevertheless, I guess I'll say something. So, I wanted to take it a little bit differently. There is this sort of layer of meaning that kind of can be laid onto these parables, and they're beautiful partly because they have so much richness, because there's so many ways that you can think about them, and that they still hold their meaning. They still hold some purpose to it. Like, we can read it sort of literally and think about the story and the grace of God and that sort of thing. And that's beautiful. And then there's other ways that we can kind of, and then you can think about it this way and it still works, and this way and it still works, and so forth. And so we're going to do that a little bit today. I'm going to try a version of this that might be a new way of thinking about it, and maybe it'll have some meaning for us. So if we took a look at the parable, We took a look at it from the point of view of the younger son, the prodigal. He takes his inheritance and he leaves to this distant country. And he goes and wastes it, squanders it, spends it all, and finds himself quickly destitute. In order to survive, he has to scratch by on a junky little wage, so little, in fact, that he actually is envious of the pigs that he was hired to feed, right? How far down the hole do you have to go when you're at that point, right? The pigs are eating better than him. And that realization about how bad things have become for him, that realization has a kind of hitting bottom moment to it. It woke him up, right? Oh my, look at what has come to me. And it kindled his humility. And that's really the important part of the younger brother's story. He says, look at me, look what I've become. Look at what I had and I threw away. Right? Even the lowliest of servants in my father's house lives better than I do now. So how can I go back, right? And there's this moment of tension because he knows he's done something terrible. He knows he's done something wasteful and disadvantageous for his father. He knows he's screwed up. And how can I face him, right? How can I face my father after what I've done? And after taking what he gave me freely and throwing it all away, yeah? Maybe if I just begged to be a servant in his house, he kind of reasons out to himself, if I beg to be a servant in his house, for I don't deserve to be a son, maybe he will take me back. And that's the point right there. That moment in the story, that's the humility that he's earned. And he earned it through, to some degree, his suffering and his recognition about how bad of a path I've taken. What a big mistake this was. He had to eat worse than a pig, though, before it came to him. And in this humility, he decides to turn around and go home. That's the heroic part of the younger brother's story, right? He's going to face up to what he did and try to make amends. He could have easily chosen not to, and we do all the time. Choose not to. He could have let his pride get the best of him. He could have just stayed out in the foreign land and scratched by as best he could because he just couldn't face up to the idea of facing his father after what he did. He could have decided he could just never go back. It's just not in his power. And that would have been a disaster. But the heroic path for the prodigal son was to have that moment of recognition and then to make a choice, to say, I'm going to face it. I'm going to look it in the eye. That what I've done is a huge mistake and I hurt many people. And I need to make amends. He took the path of humility. And so he returns, and he finds that, far from being angry, his father's overjoyed to see him, which surprises him, and it surprises us as the readers of the story in some sense. His lost son has returned, and I suppose there's some reasonability, there's reason to be joyful, I suppose, for the father. We can believe that, but there's also this tension, like how is the father going to react? And the father is overjoyed that he embraces him and clothes him and prepares a big party to celebrate his return. But notice, even after the son comes back, and even after his father has clothed him and embraced him and has tears and so forth, even after he realizes that the father is going to accept him back, he doesn't have to say anything. He still admits it. He still needs to face up to what he's done. And in the face of his father's delight, he still says to his father, I screwed up. I really screwed this up. You gave me so much and I blew it. I blew it. I don't deserve your love. And the father seems to not even hear it. He doesn't respond to him at all, except to say, call in the servants. Let's get this party going. Right? He doesn't, it's just nothing to him. You're back. Right? And that's all that matters. In some sense, we agree with the son. We're sympathetic with the son. He doesn't deserve this kind of response. And we look upon the father's reaction with wonder as well, just like the son. We're in the place of the son in some sense. It's amazingly generous of the father. He had every right in our kind of limited, human-centric sense of justice to just say no to this younger son, to the prodigal son. Look, you made your bed. Go out and sleep in it now. You got your inheritance. You need to get out, right? And do with what you can with it. And if you wasted it all, that's on you. You're not taking any more from me, right? It's that, we, as readers of that version of the story, we'd kind of be like, yeah, well, it's not out of the realm of reasonability for the father to respond that way. But no, he doesn't. And we look upon the father with wonder. It's amazingly generous of the father. And so he could have even taken a middle ground, right? He could have just said, he could have just not been happy about what happened, of course, the father not being happy, disappointed in how his son used this gift, but relieved that he's home and relieved that he's penitent in some sense about what happened. And so, sure, you're home. Let's forget about that. You can definitely live in the servants' quarters and be a part of the household, and we'll let you have a chance to earn your way back into good standing in some sense, earn a living and be fed at least, not eat like the pigs. But no, right? None of those. He wasn't harsh. He wasn't even middling harsh. He's fully restored, the younger son, fully restored into the good graces of his father, full joy, full acceptance. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful to behold that kind of generosity. But from the point of view of the older son, of course, he looks at the situation and finds himself feeling resentful. This brother of mine, he squandered half of everything. And you're throwing a party for him? Right? I've been here dutifully working, being a good son, and I've never once been given a party. How is this fair? How is this even remotely just? And we sympathize with him. We sympathize with that older son. Sure, there's some sour grapes there about not even getting a goat for his friends, but there's some truth to his claim, right? We're sympathetic. In our kind of limited human-centric sense of justice, we think that the older son should get some credit for being dutiful, for being faithful, for being diligent. And the father goes out to him and soothes him in his anger and says, you are always with me, right? And all that I have is yours, right? Nothing, you don't even get half, you get all, right? All that I have is yours. You're not forgotten. You will enjoy the plenty that I have, and there is enough, son, there is enough. Don't be angry. I love you both, right? You see, it's a beautiful story. It's a story of exceptional grace and forgiveness and love. And we could just as easily, like I said, leave it right there. Just let the story be and be comforted by the fact that, even if we in our own life go full prodigal some way, that God would have us back. And even if we feel that God is too gracious, like the older brother, to the point of feeling unfair, that God will make it right. And that's perfectly acceptable. But I want to peel back one more layer and think about this just a little differently, or maybe a little deeper, because although on the surface this is a story about two brothers, it's also a story about you. It's a story about each of us and our own natures, right? Because in some sense we, like each of us, are both of the brothers at the same time, right? Because think about it, there have been times in your life where you felt that how the younger brother felt. You did something wrong, you did something stupid, you hurt somebody, you hurt yourself, you made a mistake, you wish it would have been different, you have a regret. Yeah, our lives are full of the younger brother, sometimes just in small ways, maybe wrong choice of words, or right, and sometimes in large ways where we've made a big mess of our life in some sense or some way. And just like the younger brother, we just don't realize the mistakes we're making until it's too late, right? The younger brother thought he was doing well. He was going to go out and have the adventure of his life. He was going to take that inheritance and do something with it and be what he could be, right? And on some level, fair enough. It's something to accept, I suppose, in the young. But we also know that it's dangerous, and in this case it failed, right? And just like that younger brother, we don't realize while we're in the midst of it that we're making this mistake, and we resist any voices, right, of wisdom that might tell us otherwise. And then suddenly we find ourselves feeding pigs and wishing that we could eat as well as the pigs do, right? This is what happens. We come to that realization moment just like the younger brother did. I wish I would have taken better care of my teeth when I was younger, because if I had brushed better when I was younger, I wouldn't be in so much pain and have to pay so much money now in my older days, right? I wish I would have spent more time with my kids while they were growing up, less time in the office. It didn't matter as much. I made the mistake. I can't go back. All right. That was a bad choice of words. I think I hurt her feelings. Right? And so on. Those sorts of examples, those are the kind of pattern. That's the prodigal pattern, right? So we have this all the time in small and large ways throughout our life. And in fact, the older you get, the more opportunities you have to realize how well the pigs are eating compared to you. And so, although all of our stories might be different about what we regret, about what we made mistakes on and so forth, none of us escape being the younger brother from time to time in our lives, in small ways and in large. And in the same sense, simultaneously, we are the older brother as well. We have this dutiful, responsible, loyal, reasonable dimension to us, right? We're dedicated to the Father's house, and we want to please the Father. And that's all good and well. It's wonderful. But that part of our nature opens us up to the possibility of judgment and resentment, right? The feelings can be nurtured inside of you, those resentful feelings. You don't live up to the standards I expect. You're not sufficient in your dedication, in your work, in your responsibilities, right? You don't measure up. You're not worthy of being a child of my Father like I am. You see, because I do work. I do all that. I am dedicated. You're not. Right? You shouldn't even be in this house. You see? That's what the older brother feels in this story. That's the darker side of that older brother and the resentment that he can so easily feel, that we can so easily feel when we see things as being kind of unjust or unfair in this world. And by the way, the resentment of the older brother is not only displayed outwardly. We don't just get disappointed in our family and in our friends and in our coworkers and so forth and get resentful about how they're not measuring up. We also, and almost worse, turn that resentment inward, right? Because we can and we do judge ourselves and become resentful of ourselves and become convinced of our own unworthiness, right? So there's a strange interplay between these two dimensions, these two brothers that live inside of us in some sense. That's another way of understanding the story and seeing the brothers as aspects of our own inner life. But I want to go one notch further. There's one more notch. And I'll just leave this as something to think about because, this gets to be a bit of a mind bender once you keep kind of digging. I just got done saying that we, each of us, are in some sense both brothers. Like we have the tendencies to experience the patterns of the prodigal son and the older brother, even simultaneously in us. So we can do stupid things and be very self-critical, and there's this constant kind of tension going on. But in another sense, although those patterns clearly exist in us, those patterns are not you, right? Not you in the deepest sense of you. Remember when we're talking about ourselves and thinking about ourselves and expressing ourselves to others, we're taking way too much credit for who we are, right? The expression of ourself, our thinking about ourselves, does not align with ourselves. Look, you are an M&M, right? You are mostly chocolate, and you have a thin candy coating on the outside. Okay? We claim to be and put all of our attention on the candy coating, but you're really mostly chocolate. That's kind of maybe a simplified version of the human being. Our conscious thoughts about ourselves is the candy coating, but you are way more than your thoughts. That's the idea here, right? Our candy coating, our conscious thoughts, that thing that when we wake up in the morning and kind of shake off the sleepiness and we look around and we decide what we need to do for this day, what we're going to do next, right? And there's this litany of thoughts that go, oh, I gotta, get up, get dressed, brush my teeth, whatever. And that sequence of thoughts, and I want to get dressed in this certain way because I need to look professional for the ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. And there's like this whole litany of things that our conscious minds are creating and spinning inside of our minds. That conscious thought system that we have, that candy coating, tries to convince us that we are all candy coating all the way down. That what we are as an M&M is just candy coating. And that's false. Of course, you're deceiving yourself. Our thought patterns naturally try to deceive ourselves. We are naturally deceptive, which is kind of a mind-blowing statement all of its own. How can you deceive yourself? But no one questions that we can't. We certainly can and do deceive ourselves. So here's an example. Let's say you're working out a puzzle, okay? Crossword or Sudoku or something like that. And you're just thinking about the solution. Or maybe there's something at work that you're trying to think through. There's a problem and we have to try to figure out a solution. And you're thinking about it and you're thinking about it. And then suddenly it comes to you. Bam. Aha. Oh, I have an idea. That's it. Right? You have this aha moment. That's the answer. You have this. Now, here's the question. Did you know the answer to the puzzle? Or did you discover the answer? Was it revealed to you somehow and you recognized it as such? Right? Because if you knew it all along, if it was just in there, why did you have the aha moment? You see? Our conscious thinking mind wants to take credit for everything. But the truth is, we don't know where these ideas, where the solutions, where the answers are bubbling up from. Our conscious minds are just sort of discovering them as they become revealed to us, or once we realize them, right? We have all these terminologies. It's not just we're rummaging around in the house looking for an answer that's somehow, buried in our boxes in our mind, and then we pull it out and it's like, oh, here it is. But still, it's still the recognition. Aha, here it is. I don't know where all of this stuff is down there, but this is it. Here's the answer, right? That's not you, right? You're not in control of what bubbles up. That's what's so kind of mind-bending about this, right? We can kind of direct it a bit by concentrating on something. But just because you concentrate on something does not mean that you're going to be successful in what you're concentrating on, right? How many ideas have come to you in the shower where you had a problem, you're just like, I just need to forget about it, go do something else, and then the answer bubbles up from who knows where, right? Or like Einstein famously, I get my best ideas when shaving. I don't know if that's true, but it's a poster somewhere. But it's the same point, right? It's just like, it's not my conscious mind that's functioning. It shouldn't be taking credit for the ideas. The ideas are coming up, and my conscious mind is being receptive and is looking for an answer. And when it discovers it, there's this delight. Oh, here it is, right? We don't get to choose what ideas come bubbling up. We can concentrate very hard on something and just fail to come up with an answer. We don't get to control it, you see. If you could choose to answer a problem by just bending our will to thinking about it, then you wouldn't really have to think about it. You would just know the answer to it. So, but we search our minds for answers, right? But that doesn't mean we're going to find them. And we search, like even that terminology, that those kinds of phrases belie how much our conscious minds are just discovering things. We're not generating them by force. We can't force anything. We're really, truly at the mercy of our deep chocolatey depths, right? We don't choose what we like or what we don't like. We just discover them. We don't choose what we enjoy or what causes us irritation. It just happens. We're either irritated or we're not. Or what you love. Did you choose that? Or did you discover it? Right? You don't choose what makes you pleased or happy or angry or anything. We can pretend to be angry when we're not. We can pretend to be not angry when we are. But those are pretends. We do deeply know what's real inside of us. So the candy coating is not the chocolate. You see? And so, okay, so what does this have to do with this parable? You are not the brothers. Okay, so here's one layer deeper in this parable. I just said that you are the brothers, but you're also not the brothers. The deep, chocolatey, divine you in the story is the Father. He loves the part of you that ventures forth, that wants to take half of the inheritance and see what he can do with it, and loves the part of you that makes the dumb mistakes and in all humility wants to make amends. Right? That's the younger brother. He loves that part of you, and he loves the part of you that strives to be the best you can be, that strives to excel and to be loyal and to be diligent, right? That's the older brother. He loves that part of you. He forgives the wastefulness and the lost opportunities of the younger brother. He assures you, like the older brother, that all your diligence will be rewarded, that there is plenty for everyone. You'll always be with me. He loves them both, you see, just like he loves you. That's the you, that's the deepest part of you, the loved you, the divine you. That's it for this week. I hope you have a great week this week. Blessings.